Brisbane is now as expensive as Melbourne. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your hashtag not sponsored cheapish coffee and we're going to look at an article from realestate.com.au about Brisbane property prices and how we're now at Melbourne levels. We've done it. We're just as expensive. And if you wonder why my head is peeling, well, just make sure you wear a hat when you're doing 2 days of point cloud scanning. I should have learned that lesson. But I'm early 40s, early 40s, not mid 40s yet. So I still have room to learn. So let's check this one out. So Brisbane homes now as pricey as Melbourne and Perth powers ahead. Let's just bring up this chart here. This is showing you the SQM data for weekly property asking prices. And we can see, here we go, all homes, look at that. Whoa, over $1 million. Let's go three better. Right here, 3-bedroom houses. 800, what is it, 880, 878? Now, for those of you in Melbourne and Sydney, you're thinking these are normal prices. But remember, just back here in 2021, 3-bedders in Brisbane were $575,000. If we go back even further to 2019, we were down there, just over $500,000, 540. This is when I was doing YouTube videos about how unaffordable housing is, even here in Brisbane. Look at this. Now, 880 grand. I got an interesting one off topic. Kind of on topic. Let me have a shot of coffee. I got an email from a recruiter trying to advertise an architect. And you know what? Let me find that. And I will read this ad out to you. And let's play a game. How much do you think the architect is here? So, registered architect with 18 years experience in Brisbane. All stages of projects from the concept right through to CA, contract administration, which is hard experience to get now. Some firms don't even do it anymore. We had one little job, a gymnasium refit in an apartment building with a body corporate, and that was an interesting one, I tell you. And that contract administration we did on that job helped about 3 people get the architectural registration because it's like hen's teeth. So, well experienced. He specializes in the use of building information modeling in Revit as 3D and 2D visualization techniques. So that's perfect. Revit is, well, my wife was a Revit girl. I was an ArchiCAD guy. She won. Everyone uses Revit now. It's fighting with ArchiCAD, a little bit of MicroStation, but it's a very good tool that many people use. So that's a marketable skill. If people are looking at wanting to get jobs in drafting or architecture, I tell them to do a course on how to use these tools. Worked on large-scale, city-changing projects from commercial, mixed-use, residential, health, education, to complex local transport infrastructure projects. So this is a senior, experienced architect that's registered that can take on tremendous legal responsibility and pressure on a job. Now, how much do you think this person is asking for? We'll say, give me a figure plus super. Let us know in the comments. Okay, in the chats, leave it below. I will have a bit of coffee, and then I'll tell you. So, the asking salary is 115 grand plus super. And architecture is that's for 18 years experience. Architecture is a notoriously intensive profession when it comes to work. There's terrible studio culture. You see all the people talk about burnout in the game industry. Same thing in architecture. Or crunch, to get a project done. It just happens. Because, often work will come in waves of a project. And that's just how it is. It's never nice and smooth. And you have to adapt with it. You've got to work with it. And a good employer-employee relationship will make sure people are compensated. Sometimes they're not. Or time in lieu. Sometimes they don't. I remember I was working at one place where you were expected to do overtime. Unpaid. But anyway, there you go. So an architect with 18 years experience and for a 3-bedroom house, 8x, nearly 9x their asking wage, or probably closer to 8. There you go, guys. Yeah, don't do architecture to become rich. So, yeah, I mean, that shocked me that it was. I honestly thought there was more demand at the moment for architects, at least how busy everyone is. So let's jump back to this article and have a look here. So it's why I find it funny when everyone thinks architects are rich. Yeah, maybe in the 50s. But it's like anything, degrees are worth a lot less now. Everyone has the qualifications. So, property prices have reached another record high across the country, with some unlikely contenders now snapping at the heels of their pricey rivals. The latest PropTrack Home Price Index shows national property prices hit a new record high in February, although the gains were not felt equally among all capital cities. Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane remained the strongest markets over the past year, with prices up 16.3%, 12.7% and 12.16% respectively. Now, what usually happens is Sydney and Melbourne cool off a bit, and then the rest of us play catch-up. I know there's people out there that are still expecting a significant correction, but as I've said many times before, and maybe we'll go through it again, but I can't see it happening, guys. Sorry to say that, it's just there is so much out there at the moment. Where is that? Yeah, let's bring it up. Let's bring up the pillars of the housing market, guys, if not a refresher. We've got a few bad loans. There's stuff coming out from mortgage business articles about people under mortgage stress. Sure, it's going up, but it's still an insignificant amount in the overall numbers of it. If you're talking a catastrophic crash, you're talking, an event which would, frankly, encourage government intervention before it occurred. They'd be printing out stimulus checks left, right, and centre. They'd find newfangled ways to keep the economy rolling. And we've seen it. There's now evidence of them willing to take on mountains of debt, pass it on to future generations willy-nilly. And the people are calling for it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the smartest, best thing to do in the long term. But we're talking politics and we're talking a democratic system here. People don't think like that. So the migrants are returning back. That's evident. People want to come to Australia. It's not changing, guys. You've got the construction apocalypse. I had another viewer send me another person that's gone under. This is the sad reality. We're losing skills and capacity. I've got to update these slides. The playlist just keeps getting longer. You can see here, administrations have jumped up. You've got government support for housing, or the use of housing, market intervention to stimulate the economy. This is what I'm saying. If we start getting recession, interest rates are higher, we start getting unemployment, what do you think the Australian government, either side, will do to stimulate the economy? I'll have a shot of coffee again while you write your answer in the chat. They'll use property. They'll use housing. You've got the cash rate. The emergency rate was 3%. It's good to see we're above that. You've got home builder, home buy, negative gearing and super withdrawals. Zombie companies kept alive. This is the one no one talks about. There was a period during the pandemic when they changed the rules to allow businesses to trade while insolvent. Now, as a small business owner, that terrified me, because I've had to chase up people who haven't paid me. I've been pretty fortunate. There've only been 2. So over all my years in business, probably 25 grand I've been stiffed, which ain't that bad, to be honest. So I've become a lot picky with who I work with now too. But the problem is, particularly for builders, if they, let 1 month, 1 quarter go bad, run in the negative, and they try and win it on the next one, but that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen because material prices are going up. It's just getting worse and worse. This trading while insolvent could have been the seed that has led to the construction apocalypse. You've got a significant number of employed people being what was this? JobKeeper, remember that? More intervention. You've got the yes and no buyback in my backyard crowds fighting. You've got local councils. Yeah, I mean, we know about it. Market competition. 50% want to live in these 3 cities. Or 50% do. And I imagine more than 50% want to. Because you look at all the rest of Australia. Who wants to live in the middle of Australia? frankly, no one, unless you're getting paid a lot. What opportunities are there? How many people fly in, fly out? I mean, that's the reality of it. NCC changes every year, the construction code, or every 3 years. The construction code is becoming more onerous. We're having more performance requirements, more environmental requirements. These are all issues that add to the cost, and that adds a support level to the construction or the price of property. APRA interventions, they've said they'll change the banking rules with the buffer calculations to make sure they don't starve off credits. So there you go. Family support, even the majority of viewers of this channel said they'd help out a family member. So you've got to keep that in mind if they're struggling with their mortgage. The FOMO impact, the properties that changed hands over the last few years, there you go. You had 600,000 in 2021. Let's say that the 2% loans are the most highest risk one because they had the smallest deposits, just for argument's sake. That's still an insignificant amount compared to the overall number of properties here in the country, or residential properties. Then we have the demographic shift. So we've moved from households, smaller households, with 4.5 people per house in 1910 to now 2.5 people per house. We're getting many more single person families or households. This is a new thing. And that it's not that people are having less kids. There's people who want to have kids not having any. The childless has just shot up to like 30%. It's quite significant. And this is going to impact property because there's going to be more demand for the number of dwellings. We got 10.5 million dwellings here. Okay, and we're only building so many every year. You've got migration increasing the demand there, population growth. But then we also have the demographic shift, which means if someone has kids, rather than all pairing up with someone and getting one house, those people are staying single and getting two houses. So there we go, guys. And let's jump back to that article for that little refresher we had there. Let me clear that. There we go. Have another shot of coffee because I need. So let's keep looking at this one, guys. So which Aussies saw price growth in February? The relative affordability of these cities' homes, population growth, and very tight rental market are supporting home values. While low stock levels, people aren't selling. If people were really, really in trouble, then you'd start to see stock levels increase with more forced sales. We're not seeing that yet. People are doing it tough, but I would argue that people have not done it that tough in the past. So we've got to see how it's going. And the point I want to make there is that people don't realize how strong they are or what they can sacrifice, and they'll learn. So, in fact, strong growth has pushed up dwelling values in Brisbane to rival Melbourne, with both cities' median value sitting at 797,000, on par for the first time in 14 years. So this is the PropTrack data. Different figures from SQM asking prices. But we can see here in the orange, there's Brisbane, shot up, and coming down here, Melbourne. There you go, guys. So still, come on, we've got to beat Canberra. We've got to beat those. Well, you got civil servant money here. It's interesting. I don't have the data here, but we would look at commercial property vacancy rates, and you'd see in all the cities when there was a recession, vacancy rates would shoot up, but not Canberra. Not Canberra. So, values in Brisbane could be on track to surpass values in Melbourne in a matter of weeks, with the pace of home price growth in Brisbane more than 3 times as fast as growth in Melbourne so far this year. Now, that frankly makes tremendous sense. You've got much more attractive people living in Brisbane. It just goes without saying. Much more intelligent people living in Brisbane. It just goes without saying. And better weather. Better weather. And, better sports teams, better beach. maybe a tad bit of bias there. Just a tad bit of bias there. The price premium Melbourne has held over Brisbane for many years, eroded after Brisbane recorded exceptionally strong growth throughout the pandemic and over the past year, while Melbourne lagged. I wonder if also the ability now to work remotely can make a difference. You can work with clients all over the country now and live in Brisbane. And sure, you can do that in the sticks, but if you want to live in a city that isn't as hectic as Sydney and the weather isn't as shit as Melbourne, you can come to Brisbane. You still have all the significant advantages of a modern city. You can still fly anywhere you need to really easily. There you go. And your money will go a little, well, it used to go a little bit further for your housing, not so much anymore. Throughout the pandemic period, Queensland experienced an unprecedented population influx, with more people moving interstate to Queensland than to anywhere else in Australia. As a result, Brisbane was a winner during the pandemic boom and has been one of the strongest performing markets since the pandemic onset, with prices up 60.7% since March 2022. 2020. Brisbane performance is matched only by Adelaide. Oh boy, 62.3%. Regional Queensland, 63%. Regional SA, 63%. Over the same period, home prices in Melbourne have risen just 16.5%. And what's this here? Sydney versus Brisbane. Melbourne versus Sydney. Price parity. Oh boy. Properties in Melbourne have been more expensive than homes in Brisbane since 2010. 5 years ago, Brisbane's median dwelling value was just $485,000, while Melbourne's was $683,000, about 1.4 times that of Brisbane. For a period in the 94 to 97, median sales prices in Brisbane were just ahead of Melbourne. Prices in Brisbane then narrowly surpassed Melbourne again between 06 and 10, but since 2010, dwelling values in Melbourne have been higher. The supply of properties listed for sale in Brisbane has been consistently tight since the pandemic onset. At the same time, the city has experienced record net population inflows into from the southern states. The predicted population growth here in the southeast Queensland region is significant over the next few years. I wouldn't be waiting for a property crash to happen in Brisbane. Not by any measure. In fact, the strong run of growth in Brisbane has also seen the city's comparative affordability relative to Sydney narrowing. The population flows have continued post-pandemic, and according to the Commonwealth Bank Regional Movers Index released this week, Perth and Brisbane are the only capitals continuing to attract net inflows from other capital cities and regions over the 12 months to December 23. Choice for buyers remains very limited in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. The total number of properties listed for sale was down more than 40% relative to the prior decade average in January 2024. Limited housing supply relative to demand has propelled values. Melbourne, on the other hand, has seen much weaker growth after the city recorded large losses to other states and regional areas throughout the pandemic period. More recently, buyers in Melbourne have consistently enjoyed more choice relative to other markets, with the total number of properties listed for sale sitting above the decade average since mid-winter, contributing to the lagging house price recovery in Melbourne. So Melbourne's still ahead, but for how long? Although median dwelling values in Brisbane have caught up to Melbourne, the composition of housing stock has played a part. Both house and unit values in Melbourne remain slightly more expensive, with the large number of units weighing down on the median dwelling value. However, median house and unit values in Brisbane are respectively just $17,000 and $14,000 below Melbourne's, and are likely to surpass values in Melbourne if the city's prices recovery keeps lagging while Brisbane's remains strong growth. So birth gains on small but mighty rival. Perth prices in Hobart have fallen 19%, and in February Hobart was the weakest capital city. Okay, but what's that got to do with Perth? I mean, do they compare Perth? Why would you compare Perth and Hobart? I mean, they're literally on other sides of the country. What's the similarity? You got one, the centre of a state that's mining, and then you've got, well, a tourism and rural estate. Okay, well, there you go. Good for you if you're in Perth. But I think I'd prefer living in Hobart, to be honest. So let's have a chat about all of this, guys. So there we go. Brisbane property prices are at Melbourne levels. What's 14 grand differences? That's nothing really when you're talking that amount, is it? There you go, guys. Where do you see it in a year? And poor senior architects. Brisbane isn't as affordable as it was back when we bought. That's for sure. Anyway, take care, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.